Okay, breaking news. Mike McCarthy is expected to be out as Dallas head coach. So keep in mind, his contract had expired, or it's technically about to expire in about a month after the Super Bowl. Then there will be the league year will be over, and then he's free to sign anywhere else, similar to how free agency works for players. Mike McCarthy contract will be up, and it appears now, according to Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, that he will not be re-signing with the Dallas Cowboys, it's interesting timing here, because it's interesting for a couple of reasons. We don't know exactly what happened. All we can do is speculate, but here is my speculation, is you saw that, it was about a week ago, the Chicago Bears requested to interview Mike McCarthy for their head coaching job. The Cowboys said, no, he's under contract. They don't have to allow that. They decided not to allow that. But now, the fact that they're not working with him, my guess is they were considering keeping him on and, trying to negotiate it. And I think this might have been a negotiation thing more so than anything else, where he eventually felt like, you know what, let me try to market, like you see with players, which is interesting because he has gotten attention. Like I said, the Bears wanted to interview him. Apparently the Saints are interested in him now, again, according to Rappaport. So he's going to get some interviews. For me personally, if I'm Mike McCarthy, I'm just taking a job. With the money you get being a head coach, I'm not trying to find a better situation somewhere else. And McCarthy's just an interesting person, right? Because obviously there's been some embarrassing end of playoff moments. Obviously the 14 seconds running a quarterback draw, ending up not getting enough time to spike the ball, and they never even got a Hail Mary off against this 49ers. There was, of course, the other 49ers, Ezekiel Elliott at center play that I don't think they would have won those games either way, but they were embarrassing ways to lose. Mike McCarthy has had some bad moments. He's also had mostly good moments with the Dallas Cowboys. So you look at in the 5 years he's been a head coach, keep in mind he inherits an 8-8 team. So this is not a team that was spectacular, not a team that was horrible. They were kind of consistently playoff losers with Jason Garrett. Then they were kind of consistently playoff losers with Mike McCarthy, but they did have to do a bit of rebuilding. I mean, he hired Dan Quinn. That ended up being a great move for the defense, so he nailed that one. They started 6-10 his first year, but then went 12-5, although did lose to the 49ers in the playoffs. They then went 12-5 again, beat the Buccaneers in Brady's last game, but then, went on to lose to the 49ers once again in the divisional round. And then in 2023, really I think the biggest nail in his coffin perhaps was they go 12-5 for a third straight year. They play the Packers. They're the 2 seed this year, playing the 7 seed Packers, and really kind of get smoked in that game. Obviously, you can't only blame the head coach, but that's probably at least part of what did it. And then, this year, honestly, I thought this was a fine year for the Cowboys. I mean, it had so many injuries. It started off horrible. Personally, I didn't think this was an overly talented roster on top of it, and they were able to win 7 games. That's not no one's looking at that and saying Mike McCarthy was like horrible this year or anything. I think that's maybe the question you have, is he isn't a horrible head coach, but is he a great head coach? Is he going to be someone who can win you a Super Bowl? Now, again, he is someone who has won a Super Bowl. He won a Super Bowl with the Packers back in 2010. We're talking 15 years ago. I guess 14 years ago, because it was Super Bowl was in 2011, although it was the 2010 season. But even since then, I mean, they've consistently made the playoffs. And with Aaron Rodgers, it's relatively easy to consistently make the playoffs, but they still consistently made the playoffs. And he ultimately got, if you remember, he got fired from the Packers, mid-season, late in the season after they lost to the Josh Rosen Cardinals. They lost the Josh Rosen Cardinals, and he got fired later that day. They didn't even give him till the next day, which many people felt like was a bit disrespectful for someone who has won you a Super Bowl. That was kind of the lore there. So does a team re-sign McCarthy is part of the question right here. Not re-sign, but does a team add him? Again, if you're the Chicago Bears, you get the logic behind it, right? Because they kind of need some stability. And we've seen with Washington, okay, Dan Quinn wasn't looked at as like a incredible hire because he didn't, it didn't go perfect for Atlanta. Made a Super Bowl that didn't end well, that 28-3 Super Bowl. But then he gets another job with the Commanders. And part of it is, I think Dan Quinn's just learned and gotten better as a coach, but also he's brought stability. He can bring a team together, and for something like Chicago, which they kind of don't have that stability, perhaps they're looking at a Mike McCarthy as a more attractive option than someone like Ben Johnson, who I think is going to give you much better X's and O's. I've personally never been crazy about Mike McCarthy's X's and O's, and I think that there usually are some issues. I don't think he's a bad coach. I think, again, the question is, if you go with McCarthy, you're almost guaranteeing you're not going to get a dumpster fire, but are you going to get a Super Bowl contender? Maybe not. That's kind of the issue, is I think what you look at with him there. The Saints are a really interesting one. To be honest, I just don't think I would do that if I'm a Saints, if I'm a member of the Saints, and if I'm a Saints fan, I'm probably not into that, because again, I'm not saying he's a bad coach, but like, I just think there's better guys on the market, and I'd rather take a chance with one of these, young offensive guys, most of whom tend to work. I mean, I feel like the hit rate is pretty good on those guys. But again, if you're the Saints and you're not getting Ben Johnson, well, maybe you go with Mike McCarthy. Because let's not forget, I brought up Dan Quinn. The Commanders wanted Ben Johnson. That was the guy they wanted. Ben Johnson said no, he wanted to stay in Detroit, and so then they said, okay, Dan Quinn. The other interesting thing is, now the Cowboys have a vacancy, and who are they going to fill that with? Which is an interesting thing. The Cowboys are a team that, they like to make sure they can remain competitive. They like to make sure that they can be a playoff caliber team. That they had Jason Garrett for all those years, largely because he was just solid. Even if he was they never won a Super Bowl with him, of course, right? And he was there for he joined in 2010, and he ultimately left in 2019. So felt like even longer than that. But for a guy who never made a conference championship game, that's a while to be a head coach. And then McCarthy, they're kind of doing the same thing. Where do they go with right here? I don't know. It's interesting. Who do they decide to go after? Because the Cowboys do things a little bit differently. Maybe you could say, oh, they're going to bring Belichick back out of college. I don't know. But it is an interesting situation. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on Mike McCarthy being out and what that means for everybody. I'm sure the Cowboys fans want Ben Johnson. Everyone wants Ben Johnson. We'll see what happens with that. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on Mike McCarthy. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.